Most security guards quit this job within a week. Not because it's dangerous, but because of what they end up seeing when they're completely alone. This guy lasted 3 nights. He was assigned to an old distribution building on the edge of town. No employees after midnight. No deliveries scheduled. Nothing. Just him, a set of cameras, and strict instructions not to leave the security office after 2 a.m. At first, it sounded like a joke, until his monitors started showing someone walking inside the building at exactly 2:17 every night. Same figure, same path, same time, no entry logs, no door alarms, nothing. And on the 3rd night, it finally stopped staying on camera. So here's the question. If it wasn't entering the building, how was it already inside? The guard's name was Daniel Ruiz. He was 28, recently moved to Ohio for a quieter routine, and took the night shift for the pay. Most nights, he brought coffee, scrolled through his phone, and made the same slow patrols through empty hallways that never changed. The building sat on the edge of an industrial zone, surrounded by long stretches of road and a fenced perimeter backing into undeveloped land. The supervisor had mentioned a rule. After 2 a.m., Daniel was supposed to stay inside the security office. No patrols, just watch the monitors. But on his first night, right before 2:17, one of the camera feeds flickered, and he thought he saw someone standing in an empty hallway. At exactly 2:17 the next night, it happened again. Same camera, same spot, same shape, standing still for just a second. This time, Daniel didn't ignore it. He rewound the footage, frame by frame. There it was. Not a shadow. A person, standing in the middle of the hallway, facing directly toward the camera. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. There were no entry logs. And then, for a split second, another camera flickered. A different hallway. The same figure again, closer this time, just appearing. He grabbed his radio, thinking about calling it in, but stopped. What would he even say? So instead, he broke the rule. At 2:19 a.m., Daniel left the security office. The building felt different, quieter than it should have been. His footsteps echoed too loudly. He reached the hallway from the camera feed and slowed down. Nothing was there. No sound, no movement, just cold, empty space. That's when he heard it. A soft shuffle behind him. He spun around instantly, but the hallway was still empty. Then his radio cracked with static. Not a voice, just a low, broken interference, like something was trying to come through. Before he could move, the overhead lights flickered, and for a fraction of a second, he wasn't alone in the hallway anymore. A child. Small, still, dressed in an old-fashioned school uniform, too clean for an industrial building. Its head tilted slightly. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He took a slow step back. The lights flickered again, and the child was closer. Daniel turned and ran. The hallway stretched longer than he remembered, his footsteps echoing violently as the radio erupted into distorted static. He reached the security room and slammed the door shut. He locked it. Twice. For a moment, there was silence. Then he looked at the monitors. Every single camera feed was active now, and on each screen, they were there. Not one, dozens. Children, standing in different parts of the building, all wearing the same clothes. And then, one of the screens changed. The camera inside the security room. Daniel slowly turned his head, because on that monitor, something was standing right behind him. Daniel never finished that shift. The report mentioned equipment malfunction and stress response. Nothing about what he actually saw. Weeks later, he learned something. Years ago, a school bus had crashed just beyond the property line, on a road that still runs behind that fence. Daniel avoids night shifts now, but sometimes, when he closes his eyes, he still sees them. Standing, watching, waiting. They weren't trying to scare him. They were trying to be seen. How many other stories have been buried just because no one wanted to look? You never really know what can happen during a night shift. But security guards know one thing for sure. Some buildings don't stay empty after midnight. This next story comes from a guard who thought he had the easiest job possible. A locked facility, no overnight staff, and cameras covering every corner. Nothing gets in without being seen. At least, that's what he believed. Because a few nights into his shift, he started noticing something that didn't make sense. Not movement, not a break-in. Just someone already inside, standing in places where no one should have been. And the worst part, every time he checked in person, there was nothing there. So how do you explain something that shows up on every camera, but disappears the moment you look for it? Marcus Hill had taken the job because it felt safe. After years of retail, the idea of a quiet night shift sounded almost peaceful. He was 32, steady, someone who kept to himself. No crowds, no pressure. Just long, silent hours and a building that was supposed to be empty. The facility was a secured records warehouse, holding archived files and sealed storage units that hadn't been opened in years. Marcus followed the routine exactly. Check the entrances, walk the perimeter, sit in the security room and monitor the feeds. Everything was controlled, predictable. But there was one thing that stood out. One hallway, Section C, was always locked down. Not just restricted, but completely sealed. He had been told it was under maintenance, something about old structural issues. Nothing unusual, just stay out of that area until a few nights into the job. One of the cameras pointed directly at Section C flickered for a second. And for just a moment, he thought he saw someone standing inside that locked hallway. At first, Marcus brushed it off. Old systems glitched all the time. He leaned back in his chair, replayed the footage, and watched carefully. Nothing. The hallway stayed empty. But the next night, it happened again. Same camera, same spot, same still figure at the far end. Just standing there, not moving, not reacting, just present. Marcus leaned closer this time. The image wasn't distorted. It wasn't blurred. It looked real. Too real. He checked the logs. No doors had opened, no alarms had triggered. There was no record of anyone entering that area. Still, he got up. He wasn't supposed to go near Section C, but watching something that didn't make sense felt worse. The walk down the corridor felt longer than it should have. His footsteps echoed too loudly, bouncing off the metal shelves and empty walls. When he reached the sealed door, it was locked, secure, silent. Marcus stood there for a few seconds, listening. Nothing. He went back to the security room, trying to shake it off. But when he looked at the monitors again, the figure was still there. Same position, same stillness. That's when something changed. Over the next few nights, it didn't stay in one place anymore. It started appearing on different cameras, once even outside the security office door, just for a second before disappearing again. Marcus stopped leaving his chair as often. The building didn't feel empty anymore. The silence wasn't peaceful. It felt heavy, like something was sitting just outside his awareness, waiting. Then one night, just after 2 a.m., every camera feed flickered at once. Not a glitch, not a delay, a full blackout. For 3 seconds, the screens went dark. And when they came back, the figure wasn't just on one camera anymore. It was on all of them, standing in different parts of the building, facing directly toward the cameras, watching. Marcus felt his chest tighten. This wasn't a system error. And then, one of the cameras changed. The one inside the security room. For a split second, it showed the chair he was sitting in. And behind it, something moved. Marcus didn't turn around right away, because part of him already knew what he would see. Slowly, the figure stepped closer into view behind him. It wasn't fully visible. Too still. Too silent. Marcus could feel something behind him now. Not a sound. Just presence. The air felt colder. He forced himself to move. Slowly, carefully, he turned his head, just enough to glance over his shoulder. Nothing. The room was empty, but the monitor still showed it, standing right behind him. Marcus stood up instantly, knocking his chair back. His eyes darted between the empty room and the screen. It just stood there, watching him. Then, all at once, every screen went dark again. This time longer. 5 seconds. 6. 7. When they came back on, the feeds were normal. Empty hallways, quiet rooms. Except one detail. The camera inside the security room was now positioned slightly differently, as if something had touched it, as if something had been there. Marcus didn't wait. He grabbed his things and walked out of the building without looking back. But even as he stepped outside, he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been inside was still watching him leave. Marcus never returned. The company logged it as a no-show. He just said the building wasn't safe. They didn't take it seriously. To them, it was another guard who couldn't handle the isolation. Another story that didn't need to be investigated. Weeks later, he tried to look into the building's history. Nothing official stood out. No incidents, no reports. But buried in an old local article, he found something small. The land had been a temporary holding site during a regional emergency. People displaced, records lost, names untracked. People who were there, and then weren't. No follow-up, no closure, just gone. Marcus doesn't work night shifts anymore. He avoids places with too many cameras, too much silence, because now he knows something most people don't think about. Cameras aren't just there to show you what's happening. Sometimes, they show things that were never meant to be seen. And the real question is, if something can exist only where you're not looking, how do you ever prove it was there at all? Most people think the worst part of a night shift is the silence. But some guards will tell you, it's not the silence, it's the feeling of being watched when you know you're alone. This last story comes from a guard who worked in a gated residential community, where nothing ever happened. No crime, no break-ins, nothing unusual. Just long nights and empty streets. Until one night, he started getting calls from inside the neighborhood. Not from the residents, from houses that were supposed to be empty. Lights turning on, movement in the windows, shadows standing where no one lived. And every time he went to check, the houses were locked from the outside. So how do you explain someone being inside when no one has the keys? Ethan Carter had been working night security for just over a month when things started to feel off. He wasn't new to the job itself. He had done similar work before, but this location was different. Quiet in a way that felt controlled. The neighborhood was a private gated community on the edge of the city. Expensive homes, clean streets, and long stretches where you wouldn't see a single person after midnight. Most of the residents traveled often, leaving houses empty for weeks at a time. That's why security was important. Someone had to be there, just in case. Ethan's job was simple. Monitor the entrance gate, respond to calls, and do routine patrols through the streets. Nothing complicated. Most nights, he barely spoke to anyone. But there was something he noticed early on. Certain houses were always marked as vacant. Not temporarily empty, but completely unoccupied. Some had been that way for years. Still, every now and then, he'd see lights on inside them. At first, he assumed it was maintenance. Maybe cleaners, maybe electricians. But there were no records of anyone scheduled to be there overnight. And whenever he drove past to check, the houses were always dark again, locked, silent, like no one had ever been inside. It didn't happen every night. That's what made it worse. If it had been constant, Ethan could have blamed faulty wiring or a system glitch. But the pattern was irregular, unpredictable, just enough to keep him thinking about it long after his shift ended. One night, just after 1:30 a.m., the security line rang. The call came from one of the vacant houses. Ethan stared at the number for a second before answering. There was no voice on the other end, just silence. Not normal silence. The kind that feels heavy, like someone is there, listening. He hung up and checked the system logs. The call had definitely come from inside the house. So he drove over. The street was empty when he arrived. The house looked the same as always, dark windows, no signs of movement. He stepped out of the car and walked up to the front gate. Locked. No damage. No sign of forced entry. He stood there for a moment, listening. Nothing. Then, just as he turned to leave, a light came on inside. Upstairs. Ethan froze. The light didn't flicker. It didn't turn on like faulty wiring. It came on slowly, like someone had flipped a switch. He stepped closer to the window, trying to see inside. That's when he noticed the shadow, standing still, watching him from behind the glass. Ethan stepped back immediately. His heart started racing, but he forced himself to stay calm. There had to be an explanation. Someone had gotten inside somehow, but when he checked the locks again, they were still sealed. No broken windows, no open doors, nothing. The next night, it happened again. Different house, same call, same silence on the line. Ethan started to realize something wasn't right, because the calls weren't random anymore. They were following him. Every time he finished checking one house, another call would come from somewhere else, leading him deeper into the neighborhood. House after house, street after street, like something was guiding him, or moving ahead of him. And then, one night, the call didn't come from a house. It came from the security gate. Ethan turned his car around immediately and drove back to the entrance. The gate was closed, locked, exactly how he had left it. But the system showed a call had been made from the intercom. He stepped out of the car slowly, scanning the area. No one was there. The road outside the gate stretched into darkness, completely empty. For a moment, everything was still. Then the intercom clicked again. This time, Ethan didn't move. He just stood there, staring at it. And that's when he noticed something in the reflection of the security booth glass. A figure standing behind him, closer than anything had been before. Ethan turned instantly. Nothing. But the reflection, it didn't move. It was still there, standing where he had just been, watching him. Ethan backed away slowly, his chest tightening as the realization hit him. It had never been inside the houses. It had never been behind the windows. It had always been outside, moving through the streets, watching him check every empty place, waiting for him to stop looking in the wrong direction. And now, it was right behind him. Ethan quit the next day. He didn't file a full report. He didn't try to explain what happened, because he already knew how it would sound. Another guard who couldn't handle the night. Another story that didn't need to be taken seriously. But what stayed with him wasn't just the fear. It was the realization of how easily things are ignored when they don't fit into what people expect to see. The neighborhood is still there, still quiet, still monitored every night by someone new, and the records still show those houses as vacant. No residents, no activity, nothing unusual. But every once in a while, a call comes in from a place where no one is supposed to be, and someone gets sent to check it, alone. Because the truth is, some things don't need keys to get inside, and some things don't need to break in at all. So the real question is, if something can move through places we assume are empty, how many times has it already been standing right behind someone, waiting for them to finally notice?